What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Huddle presented by the Huddle Chat Sports Network. Today, we are getting rid of all the fluff, all the extra stuff, and we're getting through the bye weeks, going through the first injuries that we've had here in these first few couple weeks, and we're starting to get into the murky waters of fantasy football. And at the end of the day, this is where it starts to get a little fun, a little active in fantasy football. It's not fun when everybody's just trotting out their regular starting lineup. It's nice to see when you start to get Kendrick Bournes of the world out in people's fantasy football lineups. It's really nice when people have to start really putting their brains to use, and you get to prove that you're smarter than all those other idiots in your fantasy football league. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you smash that like button because you have no idea how much it helps me out, and it also helps me figure out what kind of episodes y'all are more into watching. So I know what kind of episodes to make, how to make my episodes, what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. So I make these episodes the best for you, the viewer. And also, if you're new to the channel as well, hit that subscriptions bar as well as that notifications bell so you always have the leg up on all those other idiots in your fantasy football league. But let's get through everything right now. As always, we're going to get into the waiver wire, or not into the waiver wire. We're going to get into the startums and situms of week 5. You're looking at the Falcons, the Steelers, the Bears, and the Packers all being on bye weeks here in our first bye week round of fantasy football here in week 5. So we have a lot of moving and shaking to do here on top of all the injuries that we've already had in the first 4 weeks. So let's get it cracking. Let's get it started off right. Going into tonight's Thursday night football game, that'll be going on a little bit later this evening. Drop down in the comments below. Let me know who you think is going to win this Thursday night football matchup if you're watching it on Thursday. We got Los Angeles Rams versus the San Francisco 49ers. You're going to be looking at the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, we're going to be starting Christian McCaffrey. He's a must start. Same thing with Kyron Williams on the other side of the ball. Neither one of them you can really question on whether you should be starting them or not. Now, moving on, you're looking at the wide receiver situation. Obviously, again, we're going to be starting Puka Nacua. Doesn't get much better than Puka Nacua in fantasy football at the current moment. When it comes to Puka Nacua, I mean, you're looking at the lines that he has in Vegas at the current moment. And Puka Nacua, truly, he's putting up like prime Tyreek Hill numbers. Vegas lines are like 8 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown almost every game for Puka Nacua. So you're looking at Puka being an obvious must start. Devontae Adams has been consistently, 4 or 5 catches, 50 to 60 yards, and a touchdown every week. He's being targeted more than any other wide receiver in the NFL inside the 10-yard line. I'm feeling really good about Devontae Adams this week. So go ahead and put him in your starting lineup as well. Outside of Christian McCaffrey, I'm not really feeling great about any San Francisco 49er. You're looking at Brandon Ayuk out this week, Juwan Jennings out this week, Ricky Pearsall out this week, George Kittle out this week. You got Jake Tongas. We're going to be sitting him as well at tight end. You're just not really looking at anything being really viable in this San Francisco 49ers offense. Now, when it comes to Matthew Stafford, we're going to be starting Matthew Stafford. The Niners have struggled to get pressure so far this season, and Matthew Stafford has an extremely good matchup against this defense. He's a solid streaming quarterback to get you out of a hole if you're one of those people that started like Joe Burrow or something at the beginning of the year. Now, moving on into our next matchup, which is going to be going down into London. Meet me at the London with the Minnesota Vikings and the Cleveland Browns. Now, typically, when you see a team playing back-to-back games, internationally, those teams typically play a lot better in the second week. It normally benefits the team that's playing back-to-backs internationally very well. So I'm looking at the Minnesota Vikings after playing in Dublin last week, having a pretty good potential to have a good game this week. So you're looking at running back Jordan Mason. Despite his shaky game last week, we're going to be starting Jordan Mason, of course. We're starting Quinshon Judkins. I really think that the Cleveland Browns are going to want to go with a more run-heavy offense if they can. I think that Quinshon Judkins reminds me of kind of a Joe Mixon style of running back. You're looking at Quinshon Judkins getting a lot of work in this offense. He's a straight workhorse in this offense and against a team in the Minnesota Vikings that aren't one of the best offenses in the league. They have a chance to have game script in their favor to allow Quinshon Judkins hopefully to wear that defense down, which is what I would want to do as an offensive coordinator. As far as Z Scott, we're going to be sitting him today. I know a lot of people have been talking about picking him up on the waiver wire, but Scott is really not. He's not it right now. He's just not merit. He's not getting enough opportunity in this offense to merit starting in the offense. We're sitting Carson Wentz, of course, in this offense in this game. The offensive line is really banged up, and I just really don't think Carson Wentz is a very consistent quarterback. He's proven it time and time again. And then we're sitting Dillon Gabriel. Nobody's really thinking about starting him. You might pay attention to how he plays to see if we're going to be discussing him on that waiver wire episode this week. But other than that, I'm staying away from any quarterback in this matchup. As far as wide receivers, of course, Justin Jefferson's going to be a must start. Jerry Jeudy is going to get a lot of work this week. I think he's definitely a strong flex option in your offense this week. Isaiah Bond, I'm only really starting him if I actually really need to start Isaiah Bond. There's a lot of better options out there for you as far as streaming options. So unless you're in desperate need, you don't need to be starting Isaiah Bond. And then you can flex Jordan Addison for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not absolutely in love with this matchup, but he's a flex with upside this week, just with how the Minnesota Vikings have been looking and how the Minnesota Vikings have been playing as well. Besides that, we're starting TJ Hawkinson and David Njoku. Both are solid tight ends that the quarterbacks on either side are going to be needing to rely on as a safety blanket going into this international game to get some offense moving. Now, moving on to our actual morning slate, that 11 p.m. slate if you're here with me in Colorado, that 1 p.m. slate if you're paying attention to the Eastern time slot. Starting things off with the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Jets. I'm looking at Javonte Williams, of course, being a must start. Breece Hall, obviously being a must start. I'd rather not start Isaiah Davis, even though you're looking at Braylon Allen having the injury. Isaiah Davis might get some more opportunities than he has previously, but I'd rather not rely on Isaiah Davis. There are a lot better options out there for you as a streamer this week. Now, other than that, you're looking at Dak Prescott. At quarterback, I think Dak Prescott, you have had the Dallas Cowboys offensive line a little bit banged up this season so far, but it didn't affect Dak Prescott very much last week at all. So I think Dak Prescott is definitely still a startable quarterback. I think George Pickens is a must-start wide receiver with CeeDee Lamb out. I'm starting Garrett Wilson still. I'm tempering my expectations with Garrett Wilson. He's going to be a low-end wide receiver too with upside. And then Justin Fields is also a starting quarterback as well. He's got a nice safe floor with the rushing upside that we've seen him present in these last few weeks. But you would hope that he gets to pass a little bit more. Typically, people like to play up when they play with the Dallas Cowboys just because they know the nation is watching. So if Justin Fields can get some more passing ability going, you have a great game from Justin Fields, but he's got a very safe floor. Moving on to some of those secondary players, you got Jalen Tolbert. He's a risky flex play. Kavontae Turpin, he's a confirmed sit for me this week as well. CeeDee Lamb obviously is going to be out with that injury. And then at tight end, I'm going to be starting Jake Ferguson for the Dallas Cowboys here this week as well. Not really starting anybody at the tight end position for the New York Jets. The New York Jets have not really represented a tight end that you feel comfortable with putting into your fantasy football lineup yet this season. So moving on from the Dallas Cowboys, New York Jets matchup, we're going to be going on to that Philadelphia Eagles, Denver Broncos matchup. That's going to be in Denver, I believe. Starting off, of course, we're going to be starting Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a must-start quarterback. You drafted him for that. Bo Nix, I would rather not start Bo Nix if I can afford it this week. He's got a bad matchup, and honestly, there are better options that you can get this week. There are Matthew Staffords in the world that you can go out and get. I'd rather not have to start Bo Nix this week. It's just a bad play against a stout Eagles defense this week. Now, AJ Brown, I'm still starting AJ Brown, even though he's been very disappointing this season. It's a tough matchup. I absolutely don't love the matchup at all. The Eagles want to win this game on the ground, but AJ Brown, he's going to be a low-end wide receiver too with upside. I wouldn't be surprised if he cracks inside that top 18 wide receivers this week. He's AJ Brown, for goodness sakes. Cortland Sutton has been an absolute stud in his last 25 fantasy football games, 25 NFL football games, however you want to count it. Cortland Sutton's a stud, and he's a must start in your offense. Troy Franklin from the Broncos offense is going to be a risky flex play for me this week. He's not meriting. He's getting a little bit of opportunity. He's just not connecting with Bo Nix the way he was in week 2. So as long as he continues to try to outrun routes at the amount that he's been running them, it's going to eventually click and start turning into production. He just has not seen that cash in quite yet. So at the current moment, I got him as a risky flex play. Then you got Devontae Smith for the Eagles. He's a start for me this week as well. He's been garnering a lot of attention, but like I said with AJ Brown, you're looking at him. I think at best you're looking at Devontae Smith being a flex play for me this week. You're just looking at. I think the Eagles want to win this game on the ground. As far as tight ends, you're going to be monitoring the status of Dallas Goedert. He did not participate in Wednesday's practice. He may end up missing Sunday. Even if he does play, of course, missing Wednesday's practice does not label you out of the game in any stretch of the word. But even if he does make the game, is he going to be limited in his target share? He's startable if he does play as a low end tight end one. So I am confident in Dallas Goedert if he is healthy this week. Now, moving through, going into that Houston Texans and Baltimore Ravens game, first things first, the Baltimore Ravens, they have just been absolutely toe up from the flow up when it comes to injuries, not just to Lamar Jackson, but to their defense as well. Almost every single one of their starting cornerbacks is at least on the injured report this week as far as the do not participate in practice. So you're looking at this matchup being really nice for Nico Collins. Nico Collins is obviously going to be a must start. Derrick Henry is going to be a must start. Let's just hope he doesn't fumble too many times. As far as running backs continue to go, we're going Woody Marks as a solid flex start this week. Baltimore's rushing defense has been pretty decent. So make sure you temper your expectations when it comes to Woody Marks. And as far as Justice Hill, you don't really have to play fantasy football for very long to know Justice Hill just straight up and down is not a good pickup. I'm not confident in Justice Hill unless you're absolutely desperate. And I'm talking 14-man league, multiple flex positions. You should not be starting Justice Hill in any sense of the word. Now, he may end up having a decent game, but I don't want to have to rely on trusting myself or on trusting Justice Hill. Now, continuing to go on with these wide receivers, you're going to be, like I said, must start Nico Collins. I think Zay Flowers on the other end of the ball is a low-end wide receiver too, with some decent upside if he can get into the end zone. But with Cooper Rush at quarterback, it's going to limit his ceiling a little bit. All other wide receivers in Baltimore, I'm probably staying away from. Same thing with Houston. I don't really trust any Houston Texans wide receiver at the current moment. And I'm going to sit Mark Andrews even if I can. If it's possible, if you got a backup tight end, you got a Dalton Kincaid out there, you got a Darren Waller you were able to get after watching this week's waiver wire episode with the Huddle Chat Sports Network. You can start one of them over a Mark Andrews this week. It's just a tough matchup up and down for Mark Andrews. As far as quarterbacks, I'm sitting them both. CJ Stroud, he just has not been trustworthy so far. Things may turn around. I mean, the Texans are going through a lot of adversity. They're going through a lot of injuries. He's lost a ton of weapons. The offensive line is absolutely putrid. I just don't think there's going to be many times you're going to really want to trust CJ Stroud this season. Moving on to the next matchup, we're going to be talking about the Las Vegas Raiders at the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, I believe, are opening up as favorites to win this game, minus 6.5. Favorites in this game. The overall points, total points is going to be 47.5 according to Vegas. So you are looking at this Las Vegas Raiders Indianapolis Colts game. I feel a lot better about this week for running backs than I do with anything else in this game. Jonathan Taylor obviously is going to be a must start in this matchup. And then you look at Ashton Genty. He had a slow start. Ashton Genty got it together over this past week or so, but I feel a lot better about him this week. He's going to be extremely usable, still start him, but I think he's going to come back to earth a little bit off of his high performance last week. So temper your expectations. Don't expect what you got out of Ashton last week. This week against the Indianapolis Colts defense, they have a decent rush defense, and I just think it's going to be not as lucrative of a game for Ashton Genty, but he's still a startable player. I'm sitting both quarterbacks in this matchup. Start Daniel Jones. I mean, I guess if you have to, if you need a backup quarterback, but he's facing a tough Raiders defense. You got Max Crosby. You got a tough pass rush. In this defense with the Las Vegas Raiders, I just don't really think Daniel Jones merits enough to be startable this week. And I'm sitting Geno Smith if I can. He just has had inconsistent play. It's made him difficult to start. And this matchup against the Colts defense is a fairly tough matchup for Geno Smith and the Las Vegas Raiders. As far as wide receivers go, obviously we're going to be starting Michael Pittman Jr. He's a must start at this point with how he's come back from the Anthony Richardson era with the Indiana Jones era. I think Jacoby Myers is startable. He's a low-end wide receiver, too, for me, especially with the Colts defense missing Kenny Moore this week. You definitely are looking at Jacoby Myers being startable. Trey Tucker could be a shaky flex for you this week. I don't want to start him in my flex position. Not saying I would do it with confidence, but I would start him if I had to in my flex position. And then at tight end, you're going to be looking at Tyler Warren, of course, being startable. He's been the best rookie tight end we've seen, at least through the first 4 weeks, in a very long time. You're looking at Brock Bowers, the same situation, man. Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren, both tight ends cut from the same cloth. Obviously must start on both of those tight ends in that matchup. Moving on, we're talking about that Miami Dolphins versus Carolina Panthers matchup. And before we get started with that, I want to make sure I ask you again, if you haven't yet, if you've made it this far, make sure you smash that like button. You have no idea how much it helps me out. And hit that notifications bell as well so you never miss a beat. And you always get that leg up on those other idiots in your fantasy football league. Now, the Miami Dolphins versus Carolina Panthers, obviously Devon Achane is going to be a must start. Chuba Hubbard is playing most of the snaps. He's running most of the routes. He's relatively involved in this passing offense. He's relatively involved in this offense in general. I think he's a solid a running back too with upside. If you have him at flex, I'd be really happy to have him as a solid flex, but he's a low end wide receiver, a running back too for me. I'm sitting Tua Tagovailoa. I'm sitting Bryce Young. You can't really trust either of those quarterbacks at the current moment. As far as wide receivers, I really only trust the number one wide receiver in this offense, respectively, Tetairoa McMillan from the Panthers, Jalen Waddle from the Dolphins. Every other wide receiver is going to be a confirmed sit for me. Darren Waller is going to be a good start for you at tight end. I think Darren Waller is going to get heavily involved in this offense. I think the Dolphins are going to start to have to run multiple tight end sets more than not, with Tyreek Hill being injured this last week. So Darren Waller is definitely somebody that you can roll out there and trust as a low end tight end one. Now, moving on, we're going to be talking about that New York Giants, New Orleans Saints matchup. Believe it or not, the Saints, I believe, at the current moment are favored to win this matchup. Things may change as we get closer, as people start putting more bets in. Obviously, Cam Scatterbo is going to be a must start against the Saints defense with the amount of carries he gets, the amount of opportunity he gets in this offense, and how terrible the Saints defense has been. He's absolutely a must start. Alvin Kamara is still playing more than 70% of the route snaps. He's running more than 70% of the routes. I still feel good about starting Alvin Kamara in my lineup. Kendre Miller is a flex who's really relying on a touchdown to have a good fantasy football game, but you can start him at your flex position and still hope for 60 total yards as far as receiving and rushing. But with a touchdown, he has a pretty decent day. So I think Kendre Miller is a definite flex you can play this week. At quarterback, we're starting Jackson Dart. He presented a pretty decent rushing floor. So he's got a nice floor in fantasy football. You hope he starts to get things together on the passing aspect. And against the Saints defense, I think this might be the best coming out game for Jackson Dart that he's going to have the entire season, especially considering already losing Malik Neighbors. I think this is going to be the best chance Jackson Dart has to come out and really show what he has underneath him. He's a must start due to his rushing floor and with this matchup. Spencer Rattler, are we even talking about Spencer Rattler for real? Wide receivers, we're going to be looking at Chris Olave being a low-end wide receiver too. He is startable. Rashid Shaheed is a shaky flex that is touchdown dependent to have even a halfway decent day. He really just has not done much. You know what you're getting from Rashid Shaheed, but maybe things start breaking correctly. I think you can throw the ball against the New York Giants. I think there's a reason that the New Orleans Saints are at least favored by a little bit to win this game. So I think Rashid Shaheed at least merits shaky flex appeal this week. As far as the wide receivers go, you're looking at Wan'Dale Robinson being very I think Wan'Dale is more trustworthy to me than Darius Slayton. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is more trustworthy in a PPR format. If you're talking about just standard, if you're talking about just half point PPR, I definitely think both of them merit shaky flex appeal this week. However, I do think that if Wan'Dale Robinson, if you do have him in a PPR league, he is a solid flex that you can take this week. He's going to be in a high volume situation. As far as tight ends, we're sitting Jawan Johnson. He's probably going to miss again this week. He was another DMP in practice, and at this point, we bought the bait at the beginning of the year on Jawan Johnson. At least some of us did, and he just never panned out really at the current moment. So right now, Jawan Johnson shouldn't even be on your roster, let alone starting in your fantasy football team. Moving on to that Tampa Bay Buccaneers Seattle Seahawks game. There's no word so far if Bucky Irving's going to be playing. If he's playing, if he starts, I feel confident about Bucky Irving as a must start. If he doesn't play, I feel more confident about Rachaad White as a low-end running back too for you. Kenneth Walker is going to be a solid flex running back with wide running back two upside. A touchdown would make him a solid running back two this week. As far as quarterbacks, I'm not starting either of the quarterbacks in this matchup. Baker Mayfield, it's not a great matchup for him. He's missing Mike Evans. I just really don't think that the Seattle Seahawks offense presents an opportunity that I would really want to run Baker Mayfield out there. You could still start him if you have to, but I would prefer not to if I don't have to. Sitting Sam Darnold as well. Just really not a great matchup for him this week. As far as wide receivers go, we're going to be starting Emeka Egbuka. At this point, I think he's a must start with the injuries and the bye weeks. So I do think Emeka Egbuka should be a must start at this point. Chris Godwin, think he's a flex, and I do feel good about Chris Godwin in my flex. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be an obvious start for you as well. Cooper Kupp, a shaky flex. The Tampa Bay defense has been pretty decent this year, especially on the passing side of things. So stay away from Cooper Kupp if you can afford it. With Mike Evans being out, you're looking at Emeka Egbuka being really the only Tampa Bay player that I'm really feeling like starting. You do have Cade Otton as well. You know I love talking about Cotton, but Cade Otton is going to be at best a high-end tight end 2, low-end tight end 1. So you start Cade Otton if you're in need. If you've lost your tight end, if you've got problems, you start Cade Otton. You should be comfortable this week. Not many tight ends are going off. Like it's kind of been the story of tight ends over these last couple of years. Now let's move on to that next game. We're going to be talking about the Tennessee Titans at the Arizona Cardinals. Tennessee's defense has been absolutely atrocious. I love this matchup for the Arizona offense. I would start Kyler Murray if I needed to. If I didn't have a better option, I'm starting Kyler Murray, and I'm feeling pretty decent about it. I'm not going to get too excited about Marvin Harrison Jr.'s big game last week. Marvin Harrison Jr. He's still. We know what to expect kind of from Marvin Harrison Jr. at the current moment. I think he's a low-end wide receiver too. Like I said, he's coming off that big game. I don't want to overreact. He's got a decent matchup, but I just really don't ever want to find myself in a position where I'm trusting the Arizona Cardinals offense to do anything for my fantasy football team. As far as the running backs, I think Michael Carter is rumored to be the starter. I think Michael Carter and Emery Demercado both have flex appeal. I'm more confident in Michael Carter in this matchup. Like I said, he has been rumored to be the lead back, but he did just get signed off the practice squad recently. So we will see. I think Michael Carter is a better pure running back than Emari Demercado. Emari Demercado is going to be used more in that passing game. So you're looking at with this matchup against the Tennessee Titans, game script might get Michael Carter involved more than Emari Demercado. Cam Ward at quarterback, we're not talking about starting him at all, really. And then Calvin Ridley at wide receiver, a shaky flex play for you at best. You don't want to sit him, but you don't want to start him either. As far as tight ends, we're going to be sitting Zach Ertz if we can. There's really not much to be excited about in this matchup as far as pass catchers. I'm really staying away from everybody besides Marvin Harrison, Calvin Ridley in my flex, and that's about it for me unless you needed to start one of those backup running backs. Now, moving on, of course. Oh, yeah, I don't want to forget about Tony Pollard. Obviously, Tony Pollard is going to be a must start. And let's move on to the Detroit Lions Cincinnati Bengals matchup on Sunday. You're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, with Jake Browning at quarterback, it's exactly what we all feared. The Bengals are trash. Jake Browning is trash. Jamar Chase owners, T. Higgins owners, I am sorry to tell you how bad things are right now. Now, I do want to let you know that I am cautiously optimistic about the output for Jamar Chase in week 5. I think Jamar Chase easily could be a top 15 wide receiver this week. It's a decent matchup. I think you can throw against the Detroit Lions, which is why I think T. Higgins could be a shaky flex for you as well. But things are not looking great for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins owners. Now, as far as running backs, of course, we're going to be going with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that the Detroit Lions are really going to lean on Sonic and Knuckles a lot in this game. They're going to want to win this game a lot through the ground. So I do think that both are going to be very solid starts for you. I think, of course, Montgomery is going to be a flex. Jahmyr Gibbs running back 1. Chase Brown on the other end of things, he's a shaky flex. You don't really want to have to start anybody in the Cincinnati Bengals offense at the current moment. As far as tight ends, of course, we're going to be starting Sam Laporta. Not really starting any of the Cincinnati Bengals tight ends. Jameson Williams is a flex position, a flex appeal player for you this week. Amon-Ra is, of course, going to get his must start for Amon-Ra St. Brown. But Jameson Williams, he's a flex appeal player that has touchdown dependency. So if you get a touchdown from Jameson Williams, he has a decent game. But like I said before, I think that the Detroit Lions are going to lean a lot on Montgomery and Gibbs throughout the entirety of this game. Moving on to these last couple of games here. We're almost finished, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with me through it. And it takes a long time to get through all the matchups, all the things here for you, but hopefully the timestamps in the description have been very helpful for you. Shouts out to those of you that have been asking for that in the comments. It's something we're going to start adding in a lot more in these videos now as well to get you the information you need as efficiently as possible. Now, moving on, like I said, to that Los Angeles Chargers, Washington Commanders game. At running backs, I'd rather not start any of those Washington Commanders running backs unless I desperately need to. Omarion Hampton for the Chargers, on the other hand, is definitely going to be a player that you can start this week. Now, as far as the wide receivers go, Looks like Justin Herbert. It looks like Jaden Daniels is going to be playing, but you are looking at Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel looking at DNPs in practice this week. So you're going to have to monitor their status going into Sunday's games. But of course, if either one of them, if both of them are healthy, I'm starting both of them. If Terry McLaurin misses any time, or if Deebo misses any time, I feel like Luke McCaffrey has merited enough ability to get a flex start on your fantasy football roster. But if both of them play, both Terry and Deebo play, I'm not starting Luke McCaffrey at all this week. With Jaden Daniels being back, if Jaden Daniels does come back, I don't think it's been confirmed that he's starting yet or not. I would start Jaden Daniels. They wouldn't roll him out there if he wasn't ready to go, and he's a must start with his rushing ability. If it's Marcus Mariota, obviously we're not starting him, and obviously Justin Herbert, we're giving him a nice start this week as well. As far as tight ends, we're going to be locking in with those tight ends. When it comes to the tight ends in this roster, you're looking at Zach Ertz. Not really feeling comfortable in starting Zach Ertz. If you're in desperation, if you're in need, if you're in a 2 tight end league, go ahead and start Zach Ertz. Other than that, I'm really not feeling like trusting anybody at the tight end right now in the Los Angeles Chargers offense. They just have had so many other targets. And honestly, when it comes to ranking the wide receivers in this Chargers offense, I'm going to kind of go with how you've seen the games be. You're looking at Quentin Johnston being an absolute stud, being the number 1 wide receiver in this offense, and being the must start in your fantasy football roster. Keenan Allen has been a consistent player. He's been kind of what the Devontae Adams has been for the Los Angeles Rams. So you're looking at Keenan Allen being a flex option for you as well. And then Ladd McConkey is a shaky flex for you. Don't really feel confident in starting Ladd McConkey, so I will avoid him if I can. Now, moving on to the Sunday night game, the final game of Sunday, which will be the New England Patriots versus the Buffalo Bills. I think that the New England Patriots are, of course, going to be the underdogs in this game. That looks like the money line right now has the Patriots at plus 340. So you can win $34 on 10. You bet on the Patriots to win Sunday Night Football. Who knows? They could shock the world. As far as running backs go, I think Ramondre Stevenson, Travion Henderson are both going to be shaky flex starts for you this week. This game could turn in to a standard divisional matchup that's kind of a ground and pound type game that both of them may be able to score a touchdown. One of them may be able to score a touchdown and make you happy for that flex start. I think both of them have decent lines when it comes to the Vegas numbers right now. I think they're both looking to have decent games, but I don't want to have to rely on them if I don't have to. Of course, we're starting James Cook at quarterback. Obviously, Josh Allen, we don't even need to talk about it. Drake May, on the other hand, is a decent streaming option for you this week. If you need a quarterback, Drake May is a great option, and it's always nice to have your quarterback play primetime Sunday night or Monday Night Football. So you kind of get into that point where you're like, hey, if I can get X amount of points from Drake May, I might mess around and win this game. So Drake May, for multiple reasons, I do like starting him as a streaming option this week. When it comes to wide receivers, I think that Stephon Diggs is going to be a shaky flex. He's startable, but I'm very skeptical about Stephon Diggs at the current moment. Then when you look at Khalil Shakir on the other end of the ball, I think he's a high floor flex with extreme upside. Khalil Shakir has become a player that you're very comfortable with starting in your offense. As far as tight ends go, obviously Hunter Henry has merited must-start ability at this point, and I think Dalton Kincaid has got an absolutely juicy matchup against this New England Patriots defense. Dalton Kincaid is a start for me as well. Moving on to the final game on the slate, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be in Monday Night Football and hosting Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. Now, you're looking at Travis Etienne being an obvious start for you this week. I'd rather not start Tootin if I don't have to. I'd rather not start Kareem Hunt or Isaiah Pacheco in my number 1 and number 2 running backs if I don't have to. If you're in need, it's bye weeks, it's injuries. Everybody's in need. I would start Kareem Hunt or Isaiah Pacheco, but I would be skeptical about it. As far as the quarterbacks go, obviously we're starting Patty the Batty and Trevor Lawrence. I just don't think it's a good play for him this week against a bad Chiefs defense. You've seen what the Chiefs have been able to do to the Jaguars in the past. Trevor Lawrence he doesn't seem like himself when he sees that red and white coming down the field. I think Trevor Lawrence could have a serviceable game, but there are much better options for you out there this week. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is startable. Shouts out to Las Vegas for consistently putting his stats above 60 yards for his lines, and he just consistently never hits it. But I do think that Brian Thomas Jr. is startable because the Kansas City defense is just not scary anymore, especially when it comes to the passing game. Xavier Worthy has become a borderline must start at this current moment. Xavier Worthy has become somebody that you can trust. On the other side of the ball, though, on the other hand, when you're looking at Juju Smith-Schuster, when you're looking at Hollywood Brown, none of them are really offering enough opportunity and enough value to merit starting in my fantasy football lineup this week. You're also looking at Tyquan Thornton. He was looking pretty good as well, but with Xavier Worthy coming back, you're looking at him not being able to play really much. He's not really representing much value. I'm sitting him as well. I'm sitting every other passive wide receiver that's not Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr. in this offense. You can start Travis Kelce if you want to. But on the other side of the ball, Evan Ingram has been pretty much unusable this season. Evan Ingram shouldn't even be on your roster, let alone being talked about as being starting in your roster. Now, that's going to do it. That's going to wrap everything up. I know it was a solid half hour that y'all just spent with me. Thank y'all so much for your patience, so much for your time. And like I said before, make sure you smash that like button, drop in that subscriptions bar, and drop in those comments below. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, and what I can change about the show. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, keep your chin up and your attitude down. I'll see y'all later on this week when we start talking about some trade opportunities and some other things before we get into Sunday's games. But other than that, y'all, keep everything happy, keep everything positive. I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.